My parents called me a useless burden after 5 years of paying their debts. Then, I discovered their darkest secret, and their lawyer had to beg. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love for you to share in the comments what city or country you're watching from and what time it is there now. Let's begin our story together. I was 28 years old, drowning in a silent despair that I meticulously hid from the world. As a software engineer at a bustling tech company in San Francisco, ICN, I spent my days debugging complex code and my nights grappling with an even greater tangle, my family's finances. Since graduating college 5 years prior, my life had become a relentless cycle of work, sleep, and sending money home. My tiny Oakland apartment was little more than a shoebox, sparsely furnished with secondhand items and thrift store finds. The stale smell of ramen often hung in the air, a constant reminder of the ambitions I'd put on hold. It was the aroma of my deferred dreams, the silent murmur of a life I was supposed to be living, juxtaposed against the one I was actually enduring. Growing up in a cozy suburban home in a quiet Ohio town, family first wasn't just a saying. It was a commandment etched into our very existence. My mother, Susan, with her perpetually sweet smile and an uncanny ability to make you feel guilty without uttering a word, always emphasized how lucky we were to have each other. My father, Robert, a man whose booming laughter filled any room, reinforced the sentiment with tales of familial loyalty and sacrifice. I truly believed it. I believed I was helping them, fostering a sense of duty and belonging that was deeply ingrained in my being. Their love, I realized much later, felt conditional, tied to my usefulness, though I never saw it at the time. I was their good son, the responsible one, the one who always showed up. The first loan request had been for my parents' mortgage, a temporary setback, they'd called it. Then came the car repairs, followed by Ashley's tuition. Ashley, my younger sister, the golden child, was enrolled at a prestigious art school in New York, a dream she pursued with seemingly endless financial backing, while I subsisted on instant noodles. Ashley's Instagram was a kaleidoscope of trendy cafes, Broadway shows, and exotic trips. Each photo was a fresh stab, a reminder of what my money was buying for her, while I denied myself even the simplest pleasures. I ignored it, telling myself it was temporary, just a little longer. They need you. The words, though unspoken, became my daily mantra, a heavy chain wrapped around my chest, tightening with each passing month. My chest often felt like a drum, beating a rhythm of silent desperation. The strain was constant. I was perpetually on edge, meticulously tracking my dwindling bank balance, ensuring enough remained after sending the bulk of my paycheck home. The pressure to perform at work was immense. A bad quarter, a missed bonus, could mean disaster for their finances and, by extension, for my manufactured mental peace. Sleepless nights became the norm, my mind racing through endless scenarios of financial ruin, not for myself, but for them. A persistent headache, a dull throb behind my eyes, became my constant companion. I felt like a marathon runner perpetually stuck at the starting line, legs burning with exertion, yet going nowhere. Then came that Tuesday night. The clock on my kitchen wall read 7:30 p.m. I had just finished a particularly grueling debugging session, my brain feeling like a tangled ball of yarn. My phone buzzed on the countertop, a missed call from my mother. Typical. I reached for it, my fingers sticky from a takeout container, and saw the voicemail icon. I tapped it, expecting the usual update on Ashley's latest accomplishment or another subtle hint about their financial needs. The recording started with static, then familiar voices, my mother, Susan, and my father, Robert, and then Ashley's shrill giggle. I assumed it was an accidental call, a fairly common occurrence with their aging phones. I was about to hang up when a phrase snagged my attention. So easily. Robert always delivers. That was Mom. Her voice, usually so sweet and comforting, now held a dismissive, almost mocking tone. My father's booming laughter, usually a sound that brought a sense of security, echoed in the tiny kitchen. He's only good for writing checks. A useless burden otherwise, isn't he, Susan? My breath hitched. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs. The cruelty in their voices was like a physical blow. A useless burden? Useless burden. The words ricocheted in my skull, each syllable a hammer blow. My hands began to tremble, the phone clattering against the cheap laminate floor. The plastic felt cold against my palm. Then Ashley's giddy, self-satisfied voice chimed in. Totally. Remember that time he bought me that new laptop? Didn't even ask why I needed it. Just sent the money. So easy. Laughter, more of her disgusting laughter. It wasn't the warm, genuine laughter of family. It was the cackle of predators, of manipulators, gloating over their prey. It was the sound of my entire world, the carefully constructed illusion of familial love and support, shattering into a million fragments at my feet. I retrieved the phone, my fingers clumsy, my ears ringing, a high-pitched whine drowning out the hum of the refrigerator. I replayed the voicemail, needing to confirm what I'd heard, needing to prove to myself that my ears weren't deceiving me. But the words were clear, sharp, undeniable, a useless burden. The pain was searing, a cold, sickening wave washing over me. It wasn't just anger, though that was certainly there, burning hot and fierce. It was a profound sadness, a betrayal so deep it felt like a physical ache in my bones. And then, the crushing, humiliating sense of stupidity. Me, Yin, the sensible one, the responsible one, had been played for a fool for 5 years. 5 years of ramen noodles, of deferred dreams, of constant anxiety. All for this casual dismissiveness, this contempt. The house I'd grown up in, the one whose salvation I'd poured my life into, suddenly felt like a haunted prison. Every family photo on the wall, every memory of a shared holiday, a birthday cake, a whispered bedtime story, now felt like an accusation. They were actors, and I, the naive one, had been their audience, their unwitting benefactor. The love I thought we shared, the bonds I believed unbreakable, were nothing more than a meticulously orchestrated performance, an elaborate charade designed to bleed me dry. I didn't confront them immediately. The shock was too profound, the wound too raw. Instead, a cold, calculating resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach. My initial reaction was to curl up and cry, but something colder, harder, took root. I needed to understand the full extent of their deception. I needed to see them truly, without the rose-tinted glasses of filial piety. And then, I would act. My silence wasn't submission, it was preparation. The silence that followed that voicemail was the heaviest sound I'd ever experienced. Days bled into a week, then 2. My parents called, Ashley texted, but I kept my replies short, distant. I found myself observing them with a chilling detachment, noticing the subtle hints, the veiled expectations, the way their conversations almost always circled back to money or Ashley's needs, never to my well-being. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the intricate puppet strings that had always controlled me. Then came the inevitable call. My mother's cloyingly sweet voice floated through the phone. Yin, honey, Ashley has found this amazing opportunity to study art in Florence for a semester. It's a huge step for her career, but it's so expensive. Your father and I were hoping you could help us out, just a little. My breath caught, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This was the moment, the next loan, the request that would either break me or free me. My voice was like a tightrope walker's, shaky, yet firm. Mom, I began, my voice rough. I can't send any money right now. A stunned silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could almost hear her processing my refusal. Then her tone shifted, hardening. Yin, what are you talking about? After everything we've done for you, we sacrificed so much. Your father worked 2 jobs to send you to that good school. Her voice rose, a familiar, manipulative tremor entering it. You're breaking your mother's heart, Yin. How can you do this to your own family? The gaslighting began. You're imagining things, son. We love you. We've always been there for you. It was a familiar dance, one I'd been performing my entire life. But this time, the music was off-key. I held firm, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles ached. I'm sorry, Mom. My answer is no. I hung up before she could launch into another tirade, my hand trembling as I placed the phone back on its base. The small victory tasted like ash. Within 24 hours, Ashley arrived at my apartment, unannounced, of course. I opened the door to find her standing there, a designer handbag slung over her shoulder, her eyes welling up with perfectly timed tears, her signature move. Yin, what's going on? Mom and Dad are so worried about you. She brushed past me, the scent of her expensive perfume filling my tiny living room, making it feel even smaller. She perched delicately on my worn armchair, looking utterly out of place. Don't you want to see me succeed, Yin? This Florence program is my chance, my future. What kind of brother are you, denying me this? She sniffled, dabbing a single tear from her cheek. I thought we were family. I thought we supported each other. Her words were needles, pricking the open wound of my betrayal. But the voicemail had immunized me against her performance. Ashley, I said, my voice flat. I'm not going to discuss my finances with you, and I'm not paying for your trip to Florence. Her face contorted, the mask of vulnerability slipping away, replaced by a flash of entitled rage. How dare you? You owe me. You always said you'd help me. After everything Mom and Dad have done for you. She launched into a tirade, reminding me of every perceived favor, every minor inconvenience they'd endured, trying to guilt me for simply existing. She even subtly reminded me of the time I had to cancel a weekend trip with college friends because I had to drive her to a sorority event hours away. I stood there silently, letting her words wash over me, powerless to wound me now. When her emotional appeals failed, their tactics escalated. The public shaming began subtly at first. Whispers among extended family at a cousin's birthday party, relayed back to me by a well-meaning but distant aunt. Then, the thinly veiled social media posts from my mother, cryptic updates about disappointments and ungrateful children. It was a slow drip of poison, designed to isolate me, to turn mutual acquaintances against me. My college friends started calling, cautiously asking if everything was okay with my family, sensing the shift, but unable to pinpoint the cause. I confided in Mark, a longtime friend and colleague from work. He was a steady, centered presence, known for his calm demeanor and sharp mind. We sat in a quiet corner of our favorite coffee shop, the aroma of roasted beans and warm pastries filling the air, a stark contrast to the bitterness in my stomach. I told him everything, my voice low and raw, playing in the voicemail. Mark listened, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, and then to a quiet fury. Eisen, he said, his voice firm. This isn't about family. This is about control. They're toxic. You're not crazy. You need to protect yourself. He put me in contact with Attorney Miller, a shrewd but empathetic lawyer specializing in family, estate, and financial disputes. Attorney Miller's office was a sanctuary of dark wood and muted tones. He listened patiently, his gaze unwavering. As I recounted my story, the voicemail playing for him like a damning indictment. He explained the concept of undue influence and possible avenues of recourse, while also laying out the harsh realities of legal battles within families. It won't be easy, Yan, he warned, but we need concrete evidence, bank statements, emails, anything that shows a pattern of financial dependence and manipulation. Returning to my apartment, I immersed myself in the daunting task of gathering evidence. Bank statements going back 5 years, canceled checks, email exchanges riddled with their urgent requests, and always, the chilling sound of that voicemail. It was tedious, emotionally draining work, each document a fresh reminder of their deceit. But with each file I organized, each number I tallied, I felt a flicker of empowerment. I was transforming from victim to strategist. The silence of my apartment, once deafening, now felt like a focused stillness, the sound of gears turning. The breakthrough came not from a meticulous legal search, but from a forgotten corner of my childhood home. Guided by Attorney Miller, I had scheduled a visit to retrieve some sentimental belongings that had been stored in the attic. My parents, still reeling from my refusal and sensing my growing distance, agreed with a weary sigh, likely hoping I'd eventually come to my senses. The attic, usually a dusty, forgotten space, now felt like a crypt of hidden truths. The familiar scent of old wood and mothballs filled my nostrils, normally comforting but now laden with a sense of unease. As I sifted through boxes of old yearbooks and childhood toys, tucked beneath a stack of aging photo albums, I stumbled upon a small, unmarked wooden chest. Grandma's chest, I vaguely recalled. She had passed away when I was 16, a sweet, quiet woman I adored. I rarely thought of her, lost as I was in the chaos of my own life. Inside the chest, nestled among faded lace and antique trinkets, were several official-looking envelopes. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. They were copies of my late grandmother's will and trust documents. My grandmother, rest her soul, had always doted on me. I opened the original will first. My eyes scanned the legalese, then landed on a specific clause, highlighted in faded, brittle yellow. It unequivocally stated that a substantial sum of money, enough to cover a prestigious college education and a significant down payment on a house, along with a share of a valuable vacation property in the Hamptons, was to be bequeathed directly to YN upon turning 18. It specifically mentioned it was for my future education and a secure foundation for life. My heart hammered against my ribs. Then I picked up the second set of documents. They were legal amendments, dated shortly after her passing but signed by my parents. Subtly, meticulously, they circumvented the original intent. The funds were diverted into accounts controlled by my parents, with Ashley listed as a secondary beneficiary but clearly under their administration. The wording was clever, vague enough to appear legitimate to an untrained eye, but the intent was clear. My inheritance had been systematically stolen, used to fund their lavish lifestyle and Ashley's extravagant whims, disguised as family expenses that I was now repaying. This was the real bottom. The useless burden voicemail, originally a shocking revelation of their current exploitation, now took on a new, horrifying meaning. They hadn't just started exploiting me 5 years ago. They'd been planning it, executing it, for years. My entire life, my very existence, had been a means to an end for them. The inheritance was supposed to be my secure foundation, my start. Instead, they'd used it to secure their comfort while I struggled. The raw, gut-wrenching pain of betrayal was so profound it made me gasp for air. My vision blurred, the air leaving my lungs as I stared at the faded ink, each word a chilling echo of their greed. My stomach churned with a mixture of white-hot fury and utter despair. They didn't see me as a son, they saw me as a resource. And when that resource, from an inheritance, was simply diverted, when that ran out, they turned to my paychecks. It was a cold, calculated strategy. My initial thought was to explode, to yell, to break something. But the sheer depth of their calculated deception silenced me. This wasn't impulsive, it was premeditated. The anger settled into a cold, hard resolve, sharper than any blade. There would be no more pleading, no more begging, only action. Armed with the voicemail and these damning testamentary documents, I felt a newfound strength. The pain didn't disappear, but it transmuted into a steely determination. Attorney Miller, upon seeing the documents, looked grim but resolute. "This changes everything, Yen," he said, his voice low. "This isn't just financial dependence. This is fraud and breach of trust." My parents, sensing my increasing distance, had ramped up their public smear campaign. My mother had begun posting vague but pointed messages on her Facebook, lamenting the pain of ungrateful children and sharing paragraph quotes about family bonds tested by selfishness. They called extended family, spreading carefully crafted lies about my coldness and neglect. But this, ironically, played directly into my hands. It created the perfect stage for what was to come. Through Attorney Miller, I formally requested a family meeting, not to discuss my future contributions, as I had initially considered, but to discuss the future of our family. I insisted on having a neutral third-party observer present, someone mutually respected, suggesting my Aunt Diane. Aunt Diane, my mother's older sister, was a quiet, unassuming woman who usually stayed out of family drama. My parents, perhaps seeing it as an opportunity to shame me in front of a respected relative, agreed. The day of the meeting arrived like a thundercloud, gathering on the horizon. We met in a private room at a neutral community center, a sterile, quiet space that felt strangely appropriate for the emotional surgery about to take place. My parents and Ashley arrived first, radiating an air of aggrieved righteousness. My mother, Susan, dressed in a soft floral dress, wore a strained smile, her eyes darting nervously. My father, Robert, puffed out his chest, his jaw set in a stubborn line. Ashley, impeccably dressed, wore a look of bored entitlement, occasionally checking her phone. Aunt Diane, dressed simply but elegantly, sat quietly in a corner, her gaze observing the scene with a rare intensity. The meeting began with my mother, her cloyingly sweet voice attempting to dominate the conversation. "Yen, honey, we're so glad you agreed to meet. We just want to understand why you've been so distant. Your father and I only want what's best for you. We've given you everything." She reached out, subtly stroking my arm, her signature move, a gesture meant to convey comfort, but which now felt like an insidious claim of ownership. My father chimed in, his booming voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "We've always been a close family, son, and we've always supported each other. It breaks our hearts to see you like this." Ashley nodded, wide-eyed, playing her part. I let them talk. I let them dig their own grave, allowing their familiar lies and manipulations to wash over me. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick, suffocating blanket. When they finally paused, waiting for my surrender, I took a deep breath. "Thank you for that," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. "Now, I have something to say." I looked directly at each of them, holding my gaze on Ashley's suddenly wary eyes. "And I have something to play for you." I pulled out my phone, the small device suddenly feeling like a weapon. My parents looked confused. Ashley looked annoyed. I tapped the screen, and the room filled with the chilling sound of their voices, so easily. "Robert always delivers." My mother's face paled. My father's eyes widened, his bluster deflating. Ashley's jaw dropped. "He's only good for writing checks. A useless burden otherwise, isn't he, Susan?" The room was silent except for the echoes of their mocking laughter. Their faces contorted in a mixture of shock, denial, and pure terror. "And that," I said, my voice rising, gaining strength, "is what you really think of me. After 5 years of working myself to exhaustion, sending you almost every penny I earned, living in a shoebox, and sacrificing every dream I had." I paused, letting the words sink in. Then I pulled out Grandma's will and the amended documents. I laid them on the table, side by side. "But this goes further, much further." I explained, in calm, measured tones, how my grandmother's inheritance, intended for my future, had been systematically diverted by them for their own and Ashley's benefit. This wasn't just financial dependence. This was systematic fraud. "You stole my future, and then you stole my present." Chaos erupted. My mother shrieked, "This is a lie. You're making this up. You're a hateful, ungrateful child." My father's face was beet red, veins pulsing in his temples. "You're destroying this family, Yen. You owe us everything." Ashley, usually so composed, dissolved into tears, genuine tears, not of remorse, but of self-pity and rage. "You're just jealous, Yen. You've always been jealous." But their words rang hollow against the undeniable weight of the evidence. The neutral observer, Aunt Diane, who had been sitting silently, her expression a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension, now slowly nodded. Just as my parents continued their theatrical display, Aunt Diane, in a surprisingly strong voice, spoke. "Susan, Robert, stop. You need to listen to Yen." She turned to me. "Yen, I have something to add." She reached into her purse and pulled out a letter, faded and brittle, carefully unfolded. "This is a letter from my cousin Linda, from 30 years ago." She paused, her gaze sweeping over my parents. Linda was supposed to inherit a small trust from our great-aunt for her medical school tuition. But somehow, the funds disappeared. Her parents handled all the paperwork then, too. Linda never understood what happened. She always suspected something, but she had no proof, and she was too afraid to speak up. My parents' faces drained of all color. Their eyes darted from Aunt Diane to me, then back to the letter, a chilling mirror of their past betrayal. Aunt Diane's voice grew firmer. "I saw what happened then, Yen. I didn't have the courage to say anything. But seeing what they've done to you, seeing their cruelty, I couldn't stay silent anymore." The room fell utterly silent, except for Ashley's choked sobs. Aunt Diane's testimony, coupled with the voicemail and the documents, was the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't just me. It was a long-standing pattern of deceit, a legacy of manipulation. My parents, who had always maintained a veneer of respectability, were now unmasked in front of their own sister, their secrets laid bare. It was a moment of reckoning I would never forget. The aftermath of that meeting was, predictably, a whirlwind of chaos and fallout. My parents, thoroughly exposed, made desperate attempts to regain control, to salvage their shattered reputation. They doubled down on their smear campaign, painting me as a heartless, greedy son who had turned against his own family. The calls from distant relatives, family friends, began pouring in, some offering cautious support, others laced with thinly veiled condemnation. "How could you do this to your mother?" Eisen, a distant cousin, once whispered over the phone. I severed ties with those who blindly believed their narrative, realizing that true family isn't about blood, it's about truth and respect. The relief of shedding those toxic connections, though painful, was immediate and profound. With Attorney Miller's guidance, I initiated legal proceedings. We weren't seeking to bankrupt them, but to reclaim my stolen inheritance and seek restitution for the years of exploitation. The legal process was a slow, arduous grind, filled with paperwork and strategic maneuvering. My parents, facing undeniable evidence and Aunt Diane's unwavering testimony, quickly realized that a protracted legal battle would only expose them further. After weeks of negotiation, they relented, agreeing to return the bulk of my inheritance and a significant portion of the money I had loaned them, in exchange for avoiding public litigation. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my stolen future, the one they had systematically denied me. The financial cost of the legal battle was real, but the emotional cost of severing ties was far greater. There were moments of profound sadness, a deep, aching longing for the family I had believed I had, the one that existed only in my dreams. My financial recovery was swift and decisive. With my inheritance reclaimed, I made smart investments, established a solid savings plan, and finally, for the first time in my adult life, I was truly in control of my own money. The feeling of freedom was intoxicating. I finally moved out of my cramped Oakland apartment, securing a spacious loft in Seattle, a city that promised a fresh start and a thriving tech scene. It was more than just a change of address. It was a symbolic act of liberation, physically and emotionally. The stale scent of ramen was replaced by the invigorating aroma of coffee and the crisp, clean air of the Pacific Northwest. The emotional healing, however, was a long, arduous journey. The betrayal had left deep scars. I sought therapy, delving into years of repressed emotions, learning to process the trauma of constant manipulation. My therapist, a kind, insightful woman named Dr. Karen Bantz, helped me understand the insidious nature of their control, the gaslighting, the psychological pressure. She taught me to rebuild my self-worth, to define myself not by what I could provide for others, but by who I was as an individual. Setting boundaries, I learned, wasn't selfish. It was an act of self-preservation. Your worth isn't tied to their needs, Yin, she used to say. You are valuable simply because you exist. I began to cultivate a new family, a chosen family. Mark, my steadfast friend, remained a pillar of support, his unwavering belief in me a constant source of strength. Attorney Miller, who had initially been a professional contact, became a trusted mentor, guiding me not just legally, but through the complexities of navigating familial estrangement. I joined a hiking club, met new people, formed genuine connections based on mutual respect and shared interests. I started dating Olivia, a kind, intelligent woman who saw me truly, saw me for who I was, not for what I could give her. These relationships were built on trust, empathy, and unconditional support, a stark contrast to the conditional, transactional nature of my past family dynamics. Ashley, the golden child, found herself facing a harsh reality. Stripped of her financial lifeline from our parents and unable to sustain her superficial lifestyle in New York, she eventually moved back to Ohio. I heard through the grapevine that she struggled to find stable work, that her lavish lifestyle had been built on a foundation of sand. She sent me a desperate text once, years later, asking for a small loan to cover her rent. I responded with a clear, firm boundary. I wished her well, but any future interaction would need to be based on genuine change, not manipulation. I never heard from her again. My life in Seattle flourished. I embraced new career opportunities, no longer feeling the invisible weight of financial obligation pressing down on me. I found joy in simple things: the smell of pine trees on a mountain hike, the taste of perfectly brewed coffee, the sound of laughter with friends who genuinely cared. My new apartment, filled with art I loved, comfortable furniture, and the cheerful hum of my own chosen life, became my true home. It wasn't just a place, it was a sanctuary, a testament to my resilience. Looking back, I understand that the chains weren't visible, but they were real. Breaking them was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most liberating. My past no longer defines me. My freedom does. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about boundaries, respect, and authentic connection. It's about having the courage to walk away from what poisons your spirit and the wisdom to build a life on your own terms. If you've ever felt held back by your family, or if you've had to make difficult choices for your own well-being, share your story in the comments below. What did family truly mean to you?